It's Monday. I hope everyone had a good weekend. Pretty exciting weekend around here. Big day on Saturday. There are myths. Wow. I need to wake up a little bit more. Myths today. So Saturday we had our War Room stream and with Knox. He was a great guest. We talked about all sorts of fun stuff. Why is there red on me? I don't know. So that was good. And then obviously we had the epic trivia night, Emma trivia night on Saturday night. It was very interesting. Very interesting. My team did amazing. I have to thank my teammates for really getting us very, very close to the win. We should have won. It's entirely on me. I had a strategy. I did not follow through with it, and that lost me the game. That's all there's to it. I got caught up in the moment, and I didn't enact my own strategy. But it was really interesting how we figured out that with the way that you could hinder another team using certain tactics, like, really changed the entire game. It is no longer a matter of just get everything right. No, that's not how you win anymore. So lots of things to think about going forward. And apparently Emma said that next time we'll have the same rules. So, man, there's a lot to think about. I think we're gonna need a new section of time just for bargaining with other teams and making deals and alliances, I think. Because, man, and again, absolutely no shade or negative feelings toward anybody. Everybody did great. Like I said, we're all learning this new landscape of betrayal. But yeah, I questioned what happened with the chat team, but then the chat representative, I'm not going to name names, but they explained what happened. It was like totally understood. But because there was a path. There would have been an easier path for my team's victory and potentially another team's, but then things happen. It's fine. Go watch the VOD. It was very, like I said, it was very interesting. Great questions. Obviously my team did really well with the questions. I think we got them all right, just like Cameron's team. But I really appreciated that even like some of the really hard, in-depth questions about like just Emma knowledge, some of them, especially the one I have to always go back to it, the Sailor Moon question. It was, what are the two somethings from Sailor Moon, but the names that are based on the moons of Mars or whatever, but something like that. So essentially, it was a question that you could answer from 3 different ways. If you knew the anime, if you know, Roman mythology, Greek or Roman mythology, or if you know astronomy. And I was like, that's a rad question, right? Because you don't have to only know one thing. You could come at it from 3 different points of view. So I really appreciated that. Welcome everybody who's just joined us, and hello Hudsonizer. Okay, Ant-Man is a great movie. I've got Ant-Man toys back and around there. It's because I remind you of a young Paul Rudd. I think that's why. And yes, there was a big WandaVision theme that ran throughout Saturday night's trivia, and there was a new WandaVision last week. I didn't love it. I know some people did, and that's great. If you loved it, I'm very happy for you. I did not love it. It reminded me very strongly, gave me very strong vibes connected to the recent-ish, but the reboot Star Trek movie with Khan in it. I'm not going to give any more spoilers for WandaVision because I know I don't like spoilers. I know some people haven't seen it yet, but it made me think about that, and about how if you have a mystery box, and then the only purpose of the mystery box is to please like hardcore fans, but otherwise it really means nothing to anybody else who's watching, is it satisfactory at all? I don't know. Not for me, but for other people, sure. All right, but that's talk for another day. Today is Monday, which means we are doing mythologies, and in particular, we're reading Russian fairy tales. Very excited to get back to the Russian fairy tales, and we are going to start out with the Snotty Goat. Gross. In a certain kingdom, in a certain land, there lived a merchant who had 3 daughters. He built himself a new house and sent his eldest daughter to spend the night there. In the morning he asked her what she had seen in her dream. She had dreamed that she would marry a merchant's son. On the second night the merchant sent his second daughter, and she dreamed that she would marry a nobleman. The third night it was the youngest daughter's turn, and she, poor little thing, dreamed that she would marry a goat. It's going to be that kind of story. Her father was frightened and forbade his youngest daughter to go out even on the porch. But one day she disobeyed and did go out, and a goat seized her on its tall horns and carried her away beyond the steep mountains. He brought her to his house and put her to sleep on the shelf above the stove. Snot ran down his nose, slobber ran down from his mouth, and the unfortunate girl never stopped wiping him with a handkerchief, for she was not a bit squeamish. The goat was pleased. He combed his beard in his pleasure. Next morning our beauty arose and saw that the yard was enclosed with a picket fence, and that there was a maiden's head on every picket. Only one picket was empty. The poor girl rejoiced at having escaped death. Then the servants began to hurry her, saying, "Madam, this is no time to sleep. This is the time to bestir yourself, sweep the rooms, and carry the garbage out into the street." She went to the porch and saw geese flying. "Ah, geese, my gray geese, do you not come from my land? Do you not bring me news of my own little father?" And the geese answered her, "We do come from your land, and we have brought you news. There is a betrothal in your house. Your elder sister is being married to a merchant's son." The goat, on his shelf, heard everything and said to his servants, "Hey you, my faithful servants, bring out the splendid garments, harness the black steeds, let them jump thrice, and go where I desire to be." The poor girl dressed herself richly and got into the carriage. The steeds brought her to her father's house in a trice. The guests were being welcomed on the porch, and in the home was a magnificent feast was set out. Meanwhile, the goat turned into a handsome youth and walked into the yard playing his gusla. One could hardly avoid inviting a gusla player to sit down at one's table, obviously. He came in and began to sing, "Wife of the goat, wife of the snot-nose, wife of the goat, wife of the snot-nose." The unhappy girl slapped him on one cheek, slapped him on the other, jumped into her carriage, and was gone. She returned home and found the goat lying on the shelf. Snot ran down his nose, slobber ran down from his mouth. The poor girl wiped him with her handkerchief without ceasing. She was not a bit squeamish. She'd make a good mom. Next morning the servants roused her. "Madam, this is no time to sleep. This is the time to rise, sweep the rooms, and carry the garbage out into the street." She rose, set the rooms in order, and went to the porch, and she saw geese flying. "Ah, geese, my gray geese, do you not come from my land? Do you not bring me news of my own little father?" And the geese answered her, "We do come from your land, and we have brought you news. There is a betrothal in your house. Your second sister is being married to a wealthy nobleman." Again the poor girl drove to her father's house. On the porch the guests were being welcomed. In the house a magnificent feast was set out. Meanwhile the goat turned into a handsome youth and walked into the yard playing his gusla. He came in and began to sing, "Wife of the goat, wife of the snot-nose, wife of the goat, wife of the snot-nose." The unhappy girl slapped him on one cheek, slapped him on the other, jumped into her carriage, and was gone. She returned home and found the goat lying on the shelf, snot ran down his nose, slobber ran down from his mouth. Another night passed. In the morning, the poor girl rose and went to the porch. Again, geese were flying. Ah, geese, my gray geese, do not come from my land. Do not bring me news of my own little father. And the geese answered her, We do come from your land, and we have brought you news. Your father is giving a dinner. She drove to her father's house. The guests were being welcomed on the porch, and in the house a magnificent feast was set out. In the yard, the gusla player was walking about and strumming on his gusla. He was asked to come in and again began to sing, Wife of the goat, wife of the snot-nose. The poor girl slapped him on one cheek, slapped him on the other, and drove home in a trice. She looked on the shelf and found only a goat skin. The gusla player had not yet had time to turn into a goat. She flung the goat skin into the stove, and the merchant's youngest daughter found herself married not to a goat, but to a handsome youth, and they began to live happily and prosperously. Okay. And that was the Snotty Goat. I don't know. There are a lot of details. Yeah. That goat had a lot going for him, even though he was snotty and slobbery. He had a fine house, he had servants, he had fine clothing that she could wear. He also had a fence outside full of girls' heads on it, so, you know, there's a balance. But there's also magical transformations. And, yeah, it was just a matter of zipping home really quickly, finding the skin, and then, yeah, I don't know. Multiple personalities? One personality of the youth, and then when he transforms into the goat, he puts forth a different personality? I don't know. However you want to interpret that. We got a lot of threes, a lot of triplicates in there. The three daughters, the three trips, the three songs, the three talking to geese. And again, some of the actual repetition in the text, which we often see in such kind of things. All right, next we are going to read about the potter. Probably not Harry, but who knows. Once a potter was driving along the road with his pots and fell asleep as he went. Tsar Ivan the Terrible overtook him. There are people on the road who want to pass, the Tsar said. The potter looked behind him. Thank you humbly, he said. So you've been slumbering? I've been slumbering, great king. Fear not him who sings songs, but him who takes a nap. Ooh, that's a good line. Fear not him who sings songs, but him who takes a nap. You're a bold one, Potter. I love such as you. Coachman, drive more slowly. And you, Potter, tell me, how long have you been engaged in this trade? From my youth, and now I am middle-aged. Do you support your children? I do, your majesty, and yet I do not plow, I do not reap, I do not mow, and the cold does not freeze me. True, Potter, and yet the world is not without evil. Yes, your majesty, there are 3 evils in the world. And what are these 3 evils, my little Potter? The first evil is a bad neighbor. The second evil is a bad wife. And the third evil is a bad mind. And now tell me, which of these evils is the worst? From a bad neighbor I can go away. From a bad wife I can also go away if she agrees to stay with the children. But from one's own bad mind, one cannot go away. It is always with one. Yes, that is true, Potter. You are a smart fellow. Listen, you stick to me, and I'll stick to you. Geese will come from Russia. Pluck their feathers and leave them in the proper condition. I will leave them in the proper condition, and I will pluck them clean. Well, Potter, stop for a while. I want to see your pottery. The Potter stopped and displayed his merchandise. Ivan the Terrible looked at it and chose 3 earthen dishes. Will you make some more of these? How many does your majesty want? I need about a dozen cartfuls. How much time can you give me? A month. I can deliver them in 2 weeks. I'll stick by you and you stick by me. Thanks, Potter. And you, King, where will you be when I bring this merchandise to town? I will be staying in the merchant's house. The Tsar arrived in town and gave orders that everyone use only earthenware at all receptions, and that no silver, lead, copper, or wooden dishes be set on the table. The potter finished the order and brought his merchandise to town. A certain boyar came to buy earthenware from him and said to him, God be with you, Potter. I am your humble servant. Sell me all your merchandise. No, I cannot, for I made it for a special order. Don't worry about that. Take this money. You cannot be held to your promise if you did not receive an advance payment for your work. Well, how much do you want? Fill each of my vessels with money. My dear little Potter, don't try to make a fool of me. That is too much. Very well then. For each vessel filled, you will get 2. Do you agree? They agreed. You stick to me and I'll stick to you. They began to fill the pots and empty them, to pour in and pour out. They ran out of money, and there was still a great deal of merchandise. The boyar went home to get more money. Again they poured, and there still was a great deal of merchandise left, and no money. What shall we do, my little Potter? The boyar asked. You were too greedy, and now you haven't enough money to pay. I will take your plight into consideration, but in the meantime, do you know what I shall make you do? Pull me to that house. Then I will give you both the merchandise and all the money. The boyar hesitated for a long time. He was sorry about his money, and also about his dignity. But there was nothing to be done, so he finally agreed. The horse was unharnessed, the peasant sat in the cart, and the boyar began to pull him. The potter sang a song, and the boyar dragged and dragged. Where shall I pull you? He asked. To that house over there. The potter sang merrily, and when he was close to the house, he raised his voice high. Ivan the Terrible heard him, ran out on the porch, and recognized the potter. Ha! Welcome, Potter! Thank you, Your Majesty. What are you driving on? On a bad mind, Your Majesty. Well, you are a smart fellow, Potter. You have managed to sell your goods. Boyar, take off your boyar's garments and your boots, and you, Potter, take off your caftan and your shoes of bast. You put them on, Boyar, and you, Potter, put on this boyar's garments. He knew how to sell his goods. The potter did not work long, but he earned a great deal, and you did not know how to guard your boyar's rank. Well, Potter, did the geese come from Russia? They did. Did you pluck their feathers and leave them in the proper condition? No, Your Majesty. I plucked him clean. All of him. The end. All right, I like that one. So we hear about the 3 evils, right? An evil neighbor. We've all known 1 or 2 of those. An evil wife, which you can get away from if you leave her with the kids. And an evil mind, which is the hardest thing of all to get away from. And then we have this little part advice, part premonition of if the Russian geese come, you've got to pluck them and leave them in the proper condition, which of course relates to what ends up happening with this nobleman, essentially, that the potter fleeces, makes him drive to the house where Ivan is staying, and then gets his clothing and rank, apparently. Let's see. I believe there's another fairy tale regarding a cursed person shedding an animal skin. The girl burned the skin as well in an attempt to keep the handsome lad instead of ugly creature. However, the lad reprimanded her that she was impatient and shouldn't have burned the skin without his permission. If she had waited just 1 day more, the curse would have been lifted. Now that she was impatient, they would have to part away forever. That sounds familiar. Yeah, so like basically finding... I mean, obviously that story is has a different moral, right? It's finding a shortcut, but using it without sort of getting permission and talking to the person involved. Interesting. Yeah, Dad went out for cigarettes and never came back. I mean, we don't, at the beginning of the story at least, we don't get the sense that the potter is especially greedy. And then when he is greedy in his dealings with the boyar, is Did he have it in mind that he was supposed to fleece this fellow by orders of Ivan the Terrible? I don't know. I don't know. The gargoyle story from Tales from the Dark Side. Dun, dun, dun. Some words are hard to spell. It takes a couple times to get them out. All right, so yeah, I like that one. I like the Potter's story. Next, we have the Self-Playing Gusla. What does a gusla look like? I think we talked about that before. What type of? Obviously, it's some sort of a stringed instrument that you can play while singing. Gusla. Gusla, gusla, gusla. The gusla or lahuta is a single-stringed musical instrument traditionally used in the Dinarides region of southeastern Europe. The instrument is always accompanied by singing, musical, folklore, especially epic poetry. Okay. Wow, it only has one string. That's cool. The gusla player holds the instrument vertically between his knees with the left hand fingers on the strings. The strings are never pressed to the neck, giving a harmonic and unique sound. Cool. And there's some other related things to it. Okay. Interesting. Oh, yeah, Tiny Chris, definitely. It was a bow for that one. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Fists are hard too. Okay, so the Self-Playing Gusla. In a certain kingdom, in a certain land, there lived a peasant who had a son. The peasant's name was Alexei, and the son's Vanka. When summer came, Alexei plowed his land and planted turnips. And the turnips throve. Oh, I like that as a past tense of thrive. The turnips throve so well and grew so big and succulent that it was a marvel to behold them. The peasant was glad. He went to his field every morning, rejoiced in his excuse me, rejoiced in his turnips, as you do, and gave thanks to God. One day he noticed that someone was stealing his turnips and began to watch the field. He watched and watched, but saw no one. Then he sent Vanka to the field, saying, "Go watch the turnips." Vanka came to the field and saw a boy digging up the turnips and filling 2 enormous bags with them. He slung them over his back and began to drag them along with great difficulty. His legs bent under him, his back creaked. The boy dragged and dragged the bags till his strength failed him. Then he threw the bags on the ground and suddenly saw Vanka standing before him. "Do me a favor, my good man," said the boy. "Help me carry these bags home. Grandfather will reward you for it." Did I say Vanka? Vanka? When Vanka saw the boy, he stood as if petrified, staring at him with wide eyes. Then he came to and said, "All right, I'll help you." He slung the 2 bags of turnips over his shoulders and carried them after the boy, who skipped ahead, saying, "Grandfather sends me for turnips every day. If you bring them to him, he will give you much silver and gold. But don't take it. Ask for the Self-Playing Gusla instead." After a while, they came to the boy's house. In the corner there sat a gray-haired man with horns. Vanka bowed to him. The old man gave him a lump of gold for his trouble. Vanka's eyes began to gleam, but the boy whispered to him, "Don't take it." Vanka said, "I don't want gold. Give me the Self-Playing Gusla, and all the turnips will be yours." When he mentioned the Self-Playing Gusla, the old man's eyes popped out an inch. His mouth opened to his ears, and the horns on his forehead began to jump. Vanka was seized by fear. But the boy said, "Give it to him, grandfather. You want a great deal? But so be it. Take the gusla, and in return, give me whatever is dearest to you in your own house." Vanka thought to himself, "Our little house barely sticks out of the ground. Surely there is nothing precious in it." But aloud he said, "I agree." And he took the Self-Playing Gusla and went home. When he arrived, he found his father dead on the threshold. He wept and mourned for him, buried him, and went forth to seek his fortune. He came to a large city, the capital of a great king. In front of the king's palace was a meadow in which pigs were grazing. Ivanko went to the swineherd, bought some pigs from him, and began to tend them. Whenever he strummed the self-playing gusla, why would you have to strum it if it plays by itself? His whole herd began to dance. One day, when the king was away, his daughter sat by the window and saw Ivanka sitting on a tree stump, playing his gusla, while his pigs danced before him. The princess sent her maid to ask this swineherd to sell her at least one of the dancing pigs. Ivanka said, "Let her come herself." The princess came and said, "Swineherd, sell me one of your pigs." "My pigs are not for sale, they are sacred." "And what is their sacred price?" "Well, princess, if you wish to have one of my pigs, show me your white body up to your knees." The princess thought and thought, looking all around her to make sure that no one was looking, and raised her dress up to her knees, revealing a little birthmark on her right leg. Ivanka gave her a pig. The princess ordered it to be led to the palace, called the musicians, and made them play. She wanted to see how the pigs would dance to their music, but it only hid in the corners, howling and grunting. The king returned and decided to give his daughter in marriage. He summoned all the boyars and lords and merchants and peasants. Kings and princes and people of all kinds came from foreign lands and gathered in his palace. The king said, "He who guesses what mark there is on my daughter, to him I shall give her in marriage." None of them could guess, and no matter how they tried, they could not find out where the mark was. Finally, Ivanka stepped forth and said that the princess had a little birthmark on her right leg. "You have guessed right," said the king. He married Ivanka to his daughter and gave a great feast for all his people. Ivanka was now the king's son-in-law and began to live a carefree life. The end. Wow. Welcome, Emily Wolf and Erdinsk. Nice to see you both. And once again, I forgot to update Nightbot. Just one more thing in a checklist of things I need to do between Saturday streams and normal streams. It's fine. Go follow Nox and Scabby Rooster. Okay, there are some really cute things in that story. It also feels like stories like that, and we've seen a couple of these before, definitely feel like three little separate fairy tales that were merged together into one, right? It's episodic. It has very different sections to it that don't really connect to the other. Obviously, there's a through line of a sort of a smart, wily peasant, but him doing the birthmark trick has nothing to do with the turnips at the beginning. Really. And the fact that the pigs were dancing for him and attracted the princess could have been from anything, not necessarily the self-playing gusla from the other part of the story. So I have a feeling that it's just different tales stitched together into one. I don't know what's going on with this creepy old man who has horns, and when he's confronted, his eyes pop out of his head an inch and his horns wiggle on his forehead. That sounds absolutely terrifying. And he demands, I mean, I imagine he's a devil or the devil, because when Vanka agrees to give up whatever is most beloved to him, having nothing in his house, he goes home and finds his father dead. So that seems like a very Faustian bargain. It's not explicit, but that's the read that I'm getting. And then he's also a foot guy. He wants to see the princess's feet up to her knees, or he's a lower leg guy, I suppose. And it turns out all right for him, and he gets the princess after seeing the little birthmark on her right leg. Like I said, that was cute. I like that one. All right, next is a really long story that we're gonna skip. Oh, but we'll go to this one. Yeah, it could be Disney with the dancing animals, sure. And yeah, I definitely find it odd that it's a self-playing gusla, but then Vanka's playing it. Obviously, it has other powers, but it seems like a bit of a misnomer to call it the Self-Playing Gusla if you still have to play it. Next up, Ivanko, the bear's son. Bear is an animal, I assume. I mean, you never know with Russians. In a certain village, there lived a wealthy peasant and his wife. One day, the wife went to the forest for mushrooms, lost her way, and stumbled into a bear's den. The bear kept her with him, and after some time, a long time or a short time, she had a son by him. Okay, that's the start of a story. This son was a man down to the waist and a bear below the waist. His mother called him Ivanko the bearlet. Years went by, and when Ivan grew up, he wanted to go away with his mother and live with the peasants in the village. They waited until the bear went to a beehive, made ready, and ran away. They ran and finally came to their own village. The peasant saw his wife and was overjoyed. He had given up hope that she would ever return. Then he beheld her son and asked, "And who is this freak?" His wife told him all that had happened, how she lived in the bear's den and had a son by him, and that this son was human to the waist and a bear from the waist down. "Well, bearlet," said the peasant, "go to the backyard and slaughter a sheep. We must make dinner for you." "And which one shall I slaughter?" "Whichever one stares at you." Ivanko the bearlet took a knife, went out to the yard, and called the sheep. All of them began to stare at him. He forthwith slaughtered them all, skinned them, and went to ask the peasant where he should store the skins and the meat. "What's this?" yelled the peasant. "I told you to slaughter one sheep, and you have slaughtered them all." "No, father. You told me to slaughter whichever one stared at me. But when I came out into the yard, all of them, without exception, began to stare at me." "You certainly are a clever fellow. Take the meat and skins into the barn, and at night guard the door against thieves and dogs." "Very well, I will guard it." It so happens that on that night a storm broke out, and the rain fell in buckets. Ivanko the bearlet broke the door off the barn, took it into the bathhouse, and spent the night there. Thieves took advantage of the darkness. They found the barn open and without a guard, so they took whatever they pleased. Next morning the peasant arose, went to see whether everything was in order, and found that nothing was left. What the thieves had not taken, the dogs had eaten up. I mean, I guess he was very correct in worrying about thieves and dogs. He looked for the guard, found him in the bathhouse, and began to chide him even more severely than the first time. "But father, it is not my fault," said Ivanko. "You yourself told me to guard the door, and I did guard it. Here it is. The thieves did not steal it, nor did the dogs eat it up." "What can I do with this fool?" thought the peasant to himself. "If this goes on for a month or two, he will ruin me completely. I wonder how I can get rid of him." Then he hit upon an idea. The next day he sent Ivanko to the lake and told him to wind ropes of sand. In that lake dwelt many devils, and the peasant hoped that they would drag him into the water. Ivanko the bearlet went to the lake, sat on the shore, and began to wind ropes of sand. Suddenly, a little devil jumped out of the water and asked, "What are you doing here, bearlet?" "Can't you see I'm winding ropes? I want to thrash the lake and torment you devils, because you live in our lake but do not pay any rent." "Wait a while, bearlet. I'll run and tell my grandfather," said the little devil, and flop, he jumped into the water. 5 minutes later, he was out again and said, "Grandfather said that if you can run faster than I, we'll pay the rent. If not, he told me to drag you down into the lake." "Aren't you a nimble fellow?" said Ivanko. "But you cannot hope to run faster than I. Why, I have a grandson who was born only yesterday, and even he can outrun you. Do you want to race with him?" "What grandson?" "He is lying there behind a bush," said the bearlet, and cried to a hare, "Hey, hare, do not fail me." The hare darted out into the open field like mad, and in a trice vanished from sight. The devil rushed after him, but it was of no use. He was half a verst behind. Pandar, thank you so much for subscribing. Grandfather Nurgle, yeah, exactly. Now if you wish, said Ivanko, race with me, but on one condition. If you lag behind, I will kill you. Oh no, said the devil, and once more flopped into the water. After a while he jumped out, carrying his grandfather's iron crutch, and said, Grandfather said that if you can throw this crutch higher than I can, he will pay the rent. Well, you throw first. The devil threw the crutch so high that it was hardly visible. It fell back with a terrible rumble and thrust half its length into the ground. Now you throw it, said the devil. The bearlet took the crutch in his hand and could not even move it. Wait a while, he said. A cloud is coming near. I shall throw the crutch on it. Oh no, that won't do. Grandfather needs his crutch, said the little devil. He snatched the crutch and rushed into the water. After a while, he jumped out again. It's a me bondo. Thanks so much for the subscription. We're reading about devils and bearlets. This one's wild. After a while, he jumped out again, saying, Grandfather said that if you can carry his house around the lake at least one more time than I can, he will pay the rent. If not, you will have to go into the lake. Is that supposed to be hard? All right, begin, answered Ivanko. The devil heaved the horse, the horse, not the house. That makes a little bit more sense. The devil heaved the horse on his back and dragged it around the lake. He carried it 10 times till he was exhausted and sweat streamed down his snout. Apparently this devil has a snout. Interesting detail. Well, now it's my turn, said Ivanko. He mounted the horse and began to ride around the lake. He rode so long that finally the horse collapsed under him. Well, brother, how was that? He asked the little devil. I must admit, said the devil, that you carried it more times than I, and in what a strange fashion, between your legs. That way I couldn't have carried it even once. How much rent must we pay? Just fill my hat with gold and work for a year as my laborer. That's all I want. The little devil ran to fetch the gold. Ivanko cut the bottom out of his hat and placed it above a deep pit. The devil kept bringing gold and pouring it into the hat. He worked at this for a whole day, and only by evening was the hat filled. Ivanko the bearlet got a cart, loaded it with gold coins, and had the devil drag it home, and said to the peasant, Now be happy, father. Here is a laborer for you, and gold too. The end. All right, so I would posit that this is another type of story that pulls at threads from various fairy tales and mixes them together, because we've got a couple of very unique things going on. Let me catch up on some messages real quick, and then we'll continue talking about it. Yeah, and it's a bearlet. He's a man bear, not a pig, but a man bear. Self-playing instruments are known in Germanic folklore too. When German witches celebrate Walpurgis Night, eve of the 1st of May, they give instruments to strangers. The instruments can be played by anyone, so in a way the instruments play themselves, but need someone who operates them. Ooh, that sounds cool. Yeah, that makes as much sense as anything else, and it sounds like a similar tradition. So this poor woman goes into the mountains to pick mushrooms, gets caught by a bear, a very horny bear, and has a child. An inverse minotaur, yeah, a bearlet who is human from the waist up, bear from the waist down. Let's not think about that any more than is necessary. And this bearlet he's not wise, but he's very literal, right? He takes everything his adoptive father says to him and does it by the letter. He's told to kill whichever sheep looks at him. They all look at him, so he's got to kill all the sheep. He's told to guard the door, so wouldn't you know it, he takes the door off the hinges, takes it inside, and guards that door. And then he's sent to this lake to go on to do an impossible mission, and thus get dragged into the water by the devils that live in this lake. Whole separate question, why are devils living in a lake? Did bad stuff happen in this lake, and so they need to attribute it to some sort of supernatural force? Possibly. Who knows? But again, with his literal mind, he's able to twist. He's able to turn riddles, or I guess turn challenges into riddles, and beat this little devil at his own game. We never actually see this creepy evil grandfather that lives inside the lake. Although we do know that he needs an iron crutch. Not sure exactly why that is. Iron plays a really interesting part in a lot of mythologies around the world. Well, especially in Europe. But the whole iron is very complicated to turn into usable instruments. Maybe just a sign of wealth. That could certainly be. But yeah, lots of mythologies have things like iron and he has a horse. Exactly. Yeah, the devil has a horse underneath the water. There are tales of cold iron being an effective weapon against fey creatures, which again, like a lot of us know that from Dungeons and Dragons, but that does have roots in actual fairy tales. So that maybe it has something to do with that, like supernatural properties of iron. But yeah, I love the idea of you've got to carry this horse around the lake, and he carries it around the lake by riding it. That's pretty great. But yeah, the little devil, he's just dumb. I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah, what is a horse doing at the bottom of the lake? I don't have an answer for that. And he has a horse and a crutch. Oh, but we do find out there's very little description of a lot of characters in these tales, but we do find out that little devil has a snout. Not exactly what I was thinking when I was thinking of what this little devil looked like. It's also possible that devil is a Christian renaming of older fake creators. Yes, 100%. We always have to think about that when we're reading and listening to stories that are filtered through the lens of Christianity. Absolutely, absolutely. And we know that these fairy tales have old roots, but then were retold and written down once Christianity had taken over in Russia. Excellent point. The lake devil was stupid. I mean, yeah. Can't deny that. All right. It just hasn't been out in the world much. I mean, sure, if you want to look at it that way. Being a little bit more sympathetic for the devil. All right, next up, the secret ball. There once was a widowed king who had 12 daughters, one more beautiful than the other. Which, I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious, unless they're twins, triplets, etc. Every night these princesses went away. No one knew whither. And every night each of them wore out a new pair of shoes. The king could not get shoes for them fast enough, and he wanted to know where they went every night and what they did there. So he prepared a feast, summoned kings and princes, noblemen, merchants, and simple people from all the lands, and said, "Can anyone solve this riddle? He who solves it will receive his favorite princess in marriage and half the kingdom as a dowry." However, no one would undertake to find out where the princesses went at night, except one needy nobleman who said, "Your royal majesty, I will find out." "Very well, find out." Soon the needy nobleman began to doubt and thought to himself, "What have I done? I've undertaken to solve this riddle, yet I do not know how. If I fail now, the king will put me in prison." He went out of the palace and walked outside the town with a sad face. He met an old woman who asked him, "Why are you so sad, my good man?" He answered, "Grandmother, how can I help being sad? I have undertaken to find out for the king whither his daughters go every night." "Yes, that is a difficult task, but it can be accomplished. Here is an invisible cap. With its help you can find out many things. But mind you, when you go to bed, the princesses will give you a sleeping potion. However, turn your face to the wall, pour the drops into your bed, and do not drink them." The nobleman thanked the old woman and returned to the palace. At nightfall, he was assigned a room next to the princess's bedroom. He lay on his bed and made ready to watch. Then one of the princesses brought him sleeping drops and wine and asked him to drink to her health. He could not refuse, took the cup, turned to the wall, and poured it into his bed. On the stroke of midnight, the princesses came to see whether he was asleep. The nobleman pretended to be sleeping so soundly that nothing could rouse him, but actually he was listening to every rustle. "Well, little sisters," said one of them, "our guard has fallen asleep. It is time for us to go to the ball." "It is time, high time." They dressed in their best garments. The oldest sister pushed her bed to one side and disclosed a passage to the underground kingdom, to the realm of the accursed king. Ooh. They began to climb down a ladder. The nobleman quietly rose from his bed, donned his invisible cap, and followed them. Accidentally, he stepped on the youngest princess's dress. She was frightened and said to her sisters, "Ah, little sisters, someone seems to have stepped on my dress. This is a bad omen." "Don't worry, nothing will happen to us." They went down the ladder and came to a grove where golden flowers grew. The nobleman picked one flower and broke off a twig, and the whole grove rumbled. "Ah, little sisters," said the youngest princess, "do you hear how the grove is rumbling? This bodes no good." "Fear not, it is the music in the accursed king's palace." They came to the palace and were met by the king and his courtiers. The music began to play and they began to dance. They danced till their shoes were torn to shreds. The king ordered wine to be served to the guests. The nobleman took a goblet from the tray, drank the wine, and put the goblet in his pocket. At last the party was over. The princesses said farewell to their cavaliers, promised to come the next night, returned home, undressed, and went to sleep. The next morning the king summoned the needy nobleman. "Well," he said, "have you discovered what my daughters do every night?" "I have." "Then where do they go?" "To the underground kingdom, to the accursed king, and there they dance all night." The king summoned his daughters and began to question them. "Where were you last night?" The princesses denied everything. "We did not go anywhere," they said. "Have you not been with the accursed king? This nobleman testifies against you and is ready to offer proof." "Father, he cannot offer proof, for he slept like the dead all night." The needy nobleman drew out the golden flower and the goblet from his pocket. "Here," he said, "here is the proof." The princesses had no choice but to confess everything to their father. He ordered the passage excuse me. He ordered the passage to the underground kingdom to be walled up, married the needy nobleman to his youngest daughter, and all of them lived happily ever afterward. The end. Yeah, I mean, it's called the invisible cap, but clearly it confers invisibility. Otherwise, it wouldn't help a lot. Who is the accursed king? I don't know. Is that another devil? The devil? A devil? I don't know. These girls are pretty tricky. They go to dance every night down in the underworld, the underground kingdom, but do not reveal where it is they're going, who they're going with. A fairy king, perhaps, yeah. The nobleman apparently does choose the youngest daughter to be his wife. I don't know if there's any more than that you want to read into that. Yeah, why is he accursed? I don't know. That's an excellent question. I wish I knew, but I don't. But yes, he lives underground. He's got a magical grove of trees. They drink wine all night. So yes, I assume there's something paranormal going on. Now, we did have that story a few weeks back. That insane story about the apprentice to the wizard, essentially, who went down into a hole in the ground and dealt with an entire kingdom of people that were living under the ground. So that's a theme in some of these stories. Yeah, it's a way to deal with teenage girls. I mean, at least they were just dancing all night, right? There are worse things that literally a dozen princesses could do at night. that sort of reminded me, going through some of those words. I assume I'm not the only one. People have talked about this before. That there are moments in your past that you really, really wish you could go back and say something in particular situations. Dancing, right? Getting tattoos, for example, sure, that could be one of them. I mean, it can be even simpler than that. Just like the one I'm about to say. This is the stupidest little thing that happened when I was a kid. But for some reason, I think about it every so often, and I'm like, if I could just go back, if I could just have 1 second. Mom, if you're watching, this story involves you slightly. We were in a store, a clothing store. I don't remember where exactly this was, but I vividly remember we were in a store and we were talking to a lady at the store, and there was some joke. We were joking about, so I have a brother, so we're joking about me and my brother and how like we were really good kids or something, and I said something to the extent of that, like, yeah, you know, they say, like, or my mom says that we're her princes, and the woman, mishearing me, rudely said, no, you're not a princess, you're a prince. And for some reason, this has stuck with me for my entire life. Just thinking like, no, dummy, you misheard me. I'm talking about two princes, not a princess. Obviously, like, if I want to be a princess, I'll be a goddamn princess. But that's not the point. I said princes, not princess. And I don't know, it's the dumbest little tiny piece of my entire almost 42-year-old life, but it has stuck with me to this day, and I think about it every so often. And when I saw the yeah, exactly, like, I can be a princess if I want, number one, but number two, that's not what I was saying. I was saying princes. Oh well. One of the things, you can never get back that moment, and it will haunt you forever. And like I said, I'm sure people have similarly dumb, meaningless things in their lives that we're just human. We just can't get rid of these things. But let's move on to the Indiscreet Wife. Oh yeah, these are always good stories. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and his wife. They built weirs. What does this word mean? I do not know this word. Let me find out what this word means. Weirs. Mom, you remember that one? I also have to confess, I'm not sure that I am remembering it correctly because it was when I was little. A weir, W-E-I-R, is a low dam built across a river to raise the level of water upstream or regulate its flow, or an enclosure of stakes set in a stream as a trap for fish. I did not know that word. I know the word W-E-Y-R from the Pern novels, but this is a new one. Dragon weirs, yeah. No, but this is some kind of a low water regulating dam. Okay. That can also be used to catch fish. They built weirs in the river and put a basket in each one. Then they went home. On the way, the old woman saw a treasure and immediately began to tell everyone about it. What could the old man do? He decided to play a trick on her, went to the field, caught a hare, and stopped at the river to look at his traps. He found a pike in one of them. He took it out and put the hare in its place. Then he carried the pike into the field and laid it among the grass. When he got home, he asked his wife to go with him to pick peas. They made ready and went. On the way, the old man said, "There is a rumor that fish are now living in the fields and that the beasts have moved to the river." "What nonsense, old man!" They came to the field. "But the rumor is true!" cried the old man. "Look here, a pike has crawled into our peas." "Catch him." The old man took the pike, put it into his basket, and said, Now let us go to the river and see whether there is anything in our traps. He took out a trap and said, Now you see, what people are saying is true. Look, a hare has fallen into the trap. Hold him tight or he may jump back into the water. The old man took the hare and said, Now let us go and get our treasure. They took all the money and drove home. On the way, the old woman saw a bear tearing a cow apart and said, Hey, old man, look, there is a bear tearing a cow to pieces. Be quiet, wife. That is the devil thrashing our baron. They came home. The old man went to hide the money, and the old woman ran to tell the news to her neighbor. The neighbor told it to the steward, and the steward told it to the baron, who called the old man before him and said, Have you found a treasure? Why, no. But your wife says you have. Well, it won't be her first lie. The baron sent for the old woman and asked her, Is it true, old woman, that you have found a treasure? We have, little father. Then why, old man, do you say that you have not? Asked the baron. The old man turned to his wife and said, You foolish woman, why are you lying? Where have we found a treasure? What do you mean, where? In the field, of course. It was on the same day that we found a pike swimming in the peas and a hare caught in our fish trap. Ah, you old hag, did anyone ever see a pike living in a field and a hare swimming in the water? Have you forgotten everything? At the same time, a devil was thrashing our baron. The baron boxed her ears. What are you raving about, fool? When did the devil thrash me? But he did, I swear he did. The baron grew angry, ordered rods to be brought in, and had her punished in his presence. The good woman was laid down and lashed, but she kept saying the same things even under the blows. The baron spat with disgust and drove the old couple out of his house. The end. Well, that is how you treat an indiscreet wife, apparently. Erdens asks, have I ever seen the show Being Erica? I have not. I have never heard of it. Does it have something to do with the Pern novels? Just guessing. Being Erica. Canadian comedy drama television series. You'll have to tell me what's interesting about that, but I'll bookmark it and check it out later. Yes, lots of bears. Bye-bye, New Couch. See you next time. Yeah, and it's like, is it normal that you just be walking down the road and see a bear eating a cow? Because that sounds terrifying. Absolutely terrifying that would be just a normal everyday thing for you. And yes, clearly this old man is so smart. Not only can he come up with all of these plots and things, but he's so far thinking. He's like, okay, so my wife, not the smartest, is going to say whatever anybody else asks her. So I have to come up with a plot to trick her into saying a bunch of dumb stuff so that nobody believes her. This will work out great. And then, incidentally, it gets her beaten in front of everyone. But, you know, what are you going to do? There's treasure at the end, and they do live happily ever after. Awesome. Just awesome. Oh, Ernest. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Going back to old points in your past to make different choices. Yes. Although I will say, of course, if I had the opportunity to go back in my past and change things, there are a million things I would change before that stupid little moment. But it does stick in my head for some reason. That's true with the alligators in Florida. I've been to Florida a couple times, and we've gone to look at alligators, and it's crazy. And yeah, they're just around. It's kind of awesome. Let's do one more story, and then I need to get going and take care of the kids, because I like the title of this one. The cheater cheated. I assume it means not that the cheater did some cheating, but that the cheater was cheated. We'll see. There was once a merchant who had a son. One day the merchant sent his son to the city to buy merchandise and instructed him, "Mind you, little son, be careful and don't..." Oh my goodness. "And don't make friends with redheads." It's going to be that kind of story. The merchant's son set out on his way. It was a cold day. He felt chilly and stopped at an alehouse to warm himself. When he entered, he found a red-headed servant pouring out liquor. "Pour me a glass of good liquor," said the merchant's son to him. He drank it and found it very much to his taste. "That's fine liquor," he said. "It's worth 100 rubles. Pour me another glass." He drank the second glass, and it seemed even better. No kidding. "Well, brother," he said, "this glass is worth 200 rubles." The man behind the counter was quick-witted. He wrote on the wall the sums mentioned by the merchant's son. When the time came to pay the bill, the merchant's son said, "How much do I owe you?" 300 rubles. "Are you out of your mind to charge me such a price?" "You set the price yourself, and now you are trying to go back on your word. No, brother, you can't wriggle out of it. Unless you pay, I will not let you go." There was nothing to be done. The merchant's son paid 300 rubles, went on his way, and thought to himself, "I'll remember now not to make friends with redheads. My father spoke the truth, and one should always listen to one's parents." True. At that very moment, he met a red-headed peasant driving a cart. When the merchant's son saw him, he jumped out of his carriage and lay flat in the snow, trembling with fear. What's the matter with him? The peasant wondered. He went over to the merchant's son and tried to raise him to his feet. "Get up, brother," he said. "Let me alone. One redhead cheated me. You'll cheat me too." "Don't be foolish, brother. There are redheads of all kinds. Some are cheats, some are honest. But who cheated you?" "So-and-so, the red-headed man who serves liquor in the neighboring village." "Come back with me. I'll take care of him." They returned to the alehouse. The peasant cast a glance around him and noticed that a shoulder of mutton was hanging from the main beam. He went to the servant, asked for a glass of vodka, and at the same time tapped him on his shoulder and said, "What about selling me that shoulder?" "I'll sell it for a ruble." The peasant gave him a ruble, then drew a big knife from his pocket and gave it to the merchant's son, saying, "Now, brother, cut off his shoulder. I'll have it with my vodka." "Are you crazy?" said the servant. "I told you the shoulder of mutton, not my shoulder. Don't tell me any such stories. You won't cheat me as you cheated this merchant's son. I'm no fool." The servant began to beg and implore him, bowing almost to the ground. "Very well," said the peasant. "I will forgive you if you will return all the money to the merchant's son." The servant returned the 300 rubles, and that was what the peasant wanted. "You see," he said to the merchant's son, "there are redheads of all kinds, cheats, and honest people. Now go in peace." The merchant's son was glad to go. He got into his carriage, spurred his horses, and said to himself, "Thank God I got away. The redhead servant is a cheat, but this peasant is an even greater cheat. If I had become friendly with him, he would surely have skinned me alive." The end. So don't trust a redhead is the moral of that story. Because even the smart ones are really the biggest cheats of all, and you can't trust them. The little goofy bit about the shoulder is goofy, but it's cute. I like it. How much for the shoulder? Shoulder, get it? Yes. Never trust a redhead. I mean, it's fair advice. I'm not going to say it's good advice, but it's fair. Yeah. So what did we learn today in Russian fairy tales? I don't know. I mean, we obviously learned don't trust redheads. That cheating a cheater can be fun, but I don't know. I try to come up with like a summing up of the morals of these tales and the stories, but I don't know. I do wish, like I've said before, I do wish I had a little bit more knowledge about Russian mythology to be able to pick apart some of this stuff a little bit more, but it's fun. Yes, always listen to your parents. That is true. We did learn that a couple times. So going forward, all right. So let's talk. So this week we should have. I know, right? I mean, my mother has spoken, and I listened to my mother. This week it should be all the normal streams. The last couple of weeks we haven't been able to do myths and video games on Wednesday with Pete Wiz because of a lot of just like life stuff kind of at the last minute. So hopefully it will work out this week. Tomorrow we'll look at toys in the morning as usual, and tomorrow will be Doomsday with Jessica in the afternoon. Warhammer on Wednesday, nothing on Thursday, something on Friday. So yeah, probably the normal schedule, but who knows? Things happen. You never know. There are odd things going on with children right now. I'm probably going to look ahead in this book at some point when I have time. Pick out some stories that sound particularly interesting, and then start going through the book a little bit faster. This is super fun reading these tales, but again, it is a big book. We could be reading this for a very long time. I know the last 2 weeks we haven't done Monday streams, so that has dragged things out a little bit as well. But we'll definitely do the rest of the Baba Yaga stories, and then again, if any of the names sound particularly interesting or wacky or weird, and then we'll move on to talk about some other mythology. Oh, I did want to say, that was the other thing. We've teased the book club several times, many times. We're reading Creatures of Light and Darkness by Roger Zelazny. Sunday, this coming Sunday, so a week from yesterday, we're going to do the book club, talking about the first 50 or so pages of the book. It'll be on Discord, on Jessica's Discord. So if you're not on there, get the link. I don't have it handy, but we'll get it to you. I'll talk about it in the Home Buddies Discord. And we don't have a time, but we'll be on, in theory, Jessica and I will be on live on Discord to talk about it with you all, whoever wants to talk about it as well. So yes, that's the plan as of now. Obviously, some plans are more difficult to make these days, especially like one-off things, and obviously Jessica's been dealing with stuff with her cat, so as of now, that is the plan. Hopefully, it all works out. So again, though, that means you have almost a week. If you haven't joined in, you have a week to get the book and read about 50 pages. Easy. And again, the book is available digitally, Kindle, Amazon, Apple Books, whatever, you name it. 50 pages, easy. So yes, join us for that. And I think that's it. Hey, Demon Blight. So I'm going to get going because I've got kids who are in need of direction, you might say. I'm going to send the raid over to my buddy Roy, Ryback Stun, who is apparently he's playing Hades, which is always awesome to look at. I don't know what they're doing. I saw one kid walk by. He was almost naked, had some sort of crazy glasses on, and something in his hand. I don't know what's happening, but they definitely need some supervision. Yeah, so I'm gonna send the raid over to Ryback Stun, playing Hades, which is super cool. If you have other things to do, of course, go do that. And I will see, hopefully, all of you back here tomorrow to talk about toys. Otherwise, have a great Monday. It's Monday, y'all. All right. See everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, hold on. In a minute, once the command goes through. I forgot. It's not that command. It's that, and then wait, and then this command. Okay, bye. Do 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 do.